On one fateful day, I went to Twitter and I saw a trailer for this new reality show from Hulu called $1 Million Nannies. And I was like, I have to watch this. And so I did. I binged the whole thing in one weekend. In this video, I will break down the show for you guys, and I thought it'll be a good idea to go through each of the nannies and talk about their arcs and their purpose within the season of the show. I think they're planning a second season. I don't know. I would watch the second season, but let's just jump into it. Grab your snacks, grab your drinks. Come with me on this journey, guys. Let's have some fun. So $1 Million Nannies is a show about nannies who take care of children of the 1%. Before I watched the show, I thought we were going to be following like full-time nannies in their day-to-day as they nanny these 1%'s kids. But as it turns out, the real show is a little bit different. The main character of the show is arguably a nanny named Leah. Leah is a prolific nanny of the 1% family. I think she was, or she is, or maybe she was, a nanny for Kourtney Kardashian's family. But anyway, Leah is very prolific and she has a lot of experience, and because of that, she has a lot of connections to these powerful families, and she has an extensive Rolodex of people. For Leah, it has been a dream of hers to create a nanny agency by nannies for nannies, and so she sets out to create one. Leah is part of Nanny Talk, which is a site of TikTok that I didn't even realize exists. But anyway, Nanny Talk is a hashtag on TikTok where a lot of the content in these hashtags are people sharing their experiences working as nannies, sometimes for rich families, sharing as much as they can under their NDA. From Nanny Talk, Leah recruited a couple of nannies and brought them to Ibiza. How do you pronounce it? How do you pronounce Ibiza? Ibiza. Let's go Ibiza. So from Nanny Talk, Leah recruited a couple of nannies and brought them to Ibiza to be travel nannies for these rich families. They'll do short-term contracts to help the families as they vacation in Ibiza for the summer. I would say, despite her dream, Leah is not a really good boss. While Leah does have the idea to create the agency, she doesn't really have a plan on how to run the agency as a business. I think she just thinks that, oh, it's about like connecting the nannies with the families, do the job, get paid, get referrals, and that's mostly it. She doesn't recognize that in order to run a business, there are so much more things, like so much more operational aspects that you might not realize you have to do. Like, we don't even know the name of the agency. I don't think Leah has come up with a name, but all the nannies in the show kept referring to it as Nanny Talk. So sometimes I thought the name of the agency is Nanny Talk when I don't really think that's the case. Anyway, the biggest thing that happened in the show is that Leah suddenly reveals to another nanny named Liv that Leah slept with a father whose kids she was nannying. The situation escalated when Liv spread the information around within the agency, causing a whole lot of mess, obviously. With the nanny saying that sleeping with the father of the children you are nannying, that's a big no-no. Like, you're not supposed to do that. Because Leah was working and getting paid. Leah clarified the situation, saying that it was a single dad and they were friends before she nannied for him. So it wasn't like she wrecked the family, but everyone still insisted that it was wrong because she was still technically on the clock. The whole thing snowballed and became an even bigger mess when somebody ended up leaking the information to one of their clients. So the agency had to do a lot of course correcting, making sure they take the narrative before it gets blown out of proportion as a gossip. So Leah went to a client, a family referred to as the G's, and told the mom that she slept with a father. The G's mom, Camilla, always had a problem with nannies and husbands. Like, she never trusts her own husband to be around nannies and women. She even made the nannies working for her wear scrubs and insists they don't have red nail polish and that they don't let their hair down. They have to tie it up. So you can imagine how Camilla took the news that Leah slept with the father. She fired Leah. All the nannies within the agency was worried because the G's are very powerful, arguably their biggest client, and they were relying on the G's referral to grow the company. However, instead of being worried, Leah was like, let's just move on. And that rubbed the other nannies the wrong way. I think they're getting consistent jobs, but they're all very short term. So it feels like during the summer that they are in Ibiza, they're not really doing as much work. So if you consider like the cost of them going to Ibiza compared to the amount of work that they get, I don't think they're breaking even. In an attempt to save the agency, everyone decided to vote for another person to take on the role as the face of the agency, and Leah does not take this well. And this is why I think she's not really a good business owner. She takes this whole thing as a betrayal instead of recognizing this as a PR crisis for the agency, which could impact the employment that her own employees would get. Leah felt like everyone turned on her and betrayed her, and she's entitled to her emotions for sure. But I also think that being a business owner is a responsibility where you need to be able to compartmentalize your emotions so you can make rational decisions for the sake of the company and your employees. But I understand that the agency is Leah's baby. I've worked for a lot of startups and small businesses, so I know for a lot of these owners and bosses, they're very protective of their business because they're very involved in a way. But I also think that Leah needs to recognize that she's responsible for the other nannies as her employees. Because to be honest, as much as Leah boasts about having a lot of connections, there's not a lot of jobs for the nannies. And the jobs were very short term too, like about 1 or 2 weeks. And there's only a handful of family in total within the show that they nannied for. The other nannies even talked about how despite the fact that they're not getting a lot of jobs, they sure spend a lot of money eating fancy food and going out to party. And I just thought the self-awareness was funny. I think what Leah envisioned more isn't really a business. I think what she envisions more is like she wants to hang out and vacation with the other nannies while working occasionally during this summer trip. So it feels more like she wants a collective rather than a business, I would say. Anyway, there's just a difference in urgency between Leah and the other nannies. Because the thing is, for the other nannies, they had more at stakes. Someone was saving up to move out of their parents' home. Someone turned down a stable corporate job in order to go to Ibiza. Someone had a stepfather dying from cancer back at home. A lot of these nannies had to put their lives on hold to join this agency for the summer. And Leah doesn't feel like she has as much urgency. Like when the PR crisis hit, it doesn't feel like she's trying to fix the situation, whereas the other people are trying so hard to salvage the situation. And I think that's why a lot of these people clashed with each other, and why understandably some of these nannies wanted a change in management. And I agree this is probably for the best. However, Leah thinks people voting her out is an act of betrayal, so she becomes petty to these people, which is like, oh my god, girl, you are a business owner? She was so vindictive in like the second half of the season. Like, yeah, she is entitled to her feelings, but I'm also like, because you're a business owner, I feel like you should be a little bit more considerate. You should listen more. I don't know. I'm not a business owner. Thankfully, she does get better. She ends the season recognizing that she's not a really good business owner, so she's willing to work together with another person who is going to handle the more operational aspect of the agency. The next nanny that we have is Sydney. Sydney looks a little like Rosalia. Anyway, I don't mind Sydney. I feel like she's quite serious about her job and does want what is best for the agency. But this is where things get a bit tricky because Sydney is one of Leah's closest friends. This becomes one of Sydney's biggest points of tension. She wants the agency to grow, so she is one of the people who decided to vote out Leah from being the face of the agency. But Leah is not happy about this, thinking that this is an act of betrayal from Sydney, arguably her closest friend in the agency. But the thing is, Sydney has a lot of stakes being in Ibiza. Her stepfather is battling cancer, but she's away doing this nannying trip, so I imagine for her, she would at least want the trip to be worth it. She wants to make money, she wants to make connections, she wants to work and seems serious about working. Sydney is another nanny that the G's hire. In the beginning, Sydney kind of clashed a lot with Camilla. Camilla's first impression of Sydney is like, oh, she's pretty, and then she's wearing this revealing outfit. She has red nail polish. We have to be really careful with her. But then like, Camilla still ended up hiring Sydney. Even if Camilla and Sydney got off on the wrong foot, Camilla eventually opened up to Sydney and started trusting Sydney a little bit more. After Camilla fired Leah, Sydney called Camilla and attempted to appeal to Camilla to at least finish the nannying contract, and Camilla was willing to let Sydney finish her contract as the G's nanny. I didn't realize how much Camilla trusted Sydney until Camilla called Sydney to fill in for their regular nanny who couldn't make it to Paris Fashion Week. So Sydney and another nanny named Jack went to Paris to nanny the G's babies. Of course, Leah wasn't happy about this, being incredibly angry that Sydney was still willing to engage and work for the G's after what happened to Leah, whereas Sydney and Jack were really excited, right? Like, they get to go to Paris. But also from them, from a business standpoint, right? Like, there could be something there. Camilla had refused to give a referral for the agency after the whole thing with Leah, and Camilla was even thinking of telling the other moms not to hire anyone from the agency. But the fact they were willing to fly Sydney and Jack to Paris means there could be an opportunity to change her mind. But ultimately, she ended up not changing her mind. But it was still worth asking if she would, right? Anyway, Sydney and Jack nannied for the G's in Paris, but even then, Leah still remained petty. Like, Leah didn't even say goodbye to Jack and Sydney before they left. This animosity festered that when Sydney was offered a full-time position as the G's nanny, Sydney took the job, and honestly, good on her. Get that bag. The next person to discuss is probably Jack. Jack was offered a corporate job which he turned down so he could join the nanny agency in Ibiza. I don't have much to say about Jack apart from the fact that I think he is probably one of the more level-headed people within the agency. I feel like the shadiest thing Jack did was trying to take over the position as the face of the agency, but I don't even think that the plan was entirely unfounded. Jack has corporate experience, and when he was officially elected as the face of the company, he immediately made a business strategy because he noticed the agency doesn't really have one. He made plans with actionable steps, and he delegated work involving the other nannies in actually shaping the agency. He saw that the agency was lacking direction, and he decided to make things a little bit more organized in a way. The agency feels like it has no strategy, no plans. It was mostly just operating on vibes. Jack did the best he could to put some structure into the agency. The biggest hurdle for Jack is the fact that he doesn't have a lot of context like Leah. So he doesn't really know how to connect the nannies to any families. He tried networking, he tried going to a resort or like, I think it was a restaurant, I'm not entirely sure. He tried going to a place where there should be a lot of 1% family, and he just tried the families to network within there, which is better than nothing because Leah refuses to share her contacts with Jack. I get why Leah wouldn't share her contacts because they are hers, and I'm sure it took a lot of time for her to build up her Rolodex, but I also feel like it's a little bit unkind because Jack seems genuinely interested in improving the agency. Like, yeah, he can be catty at times, but he's also logical when he wants to be. And this is why I feel like Leah is quite immature. Like, she's the oldest within the agency, but it doesn't feel like she has the emotional maturity. It feels like she doesn't seem to recognize that she may be a good nanny, she might be good at networking, but that doesn't necessarily mean that she is a good boss or a good businesswoman. There's nothing wrong in recognizing your flaws, in my opinion, but instead she lets her pettiness get in the way. Like, I know she's hurt, but she keeps saying that she wants the agency to work, but here is Jack who is trying to make the agency work, but Leah refuses to engage with him because she's jealous, because she's angry. But I don't know if I'm being a little bit too mean to Leah, but I also feel like, again, if you are a business owner, you should understand that you have a bigger responsibility and you should not let your emotions get in the way of you running the business. That's why I question whether Leah wants to have a business or if she just wants a collective. Anyway, Jack ends the season with Leah officially recognizing Jack's effort and bringing him on to manage the more operational aspect of the agency. I should also note that after the G's fired Leah and Sydney tried to reason with Camilla to still finish the contract with the agency, Camilla said fine, but I don't want Leah back in the house. You bring the gay manny, and the only gay manny within the agency is just Jack. The next nanny I want to talk about is Olivia or Liv. Liv is arguably the second person in the agency who is the closest to Leah. However, Liv is very young. She's about 21 years old and her age shows in the way that she acts. She's actually the person who spread the information that Leah slept with the dad. Leah mentioned this in passing, and rather than asking for clarification, Liv held onto the information until she shared it to another nanny named Hannah, who then shared the information to Jack because Jack and Hannah are best friends. What's that Moira Rose quote about the gossip?
Gossip is the devil's telephone. Best to just hang up.
Anyway, Liv also shared this information to another nanny named Taylor. This was an effort to comfort Taylor after Taylor got berated and piled on during an argument. But this was a very grave mistake because Taylor is the reason why the information got out of the agency. After that, Liv also voted Leah out from being the face of the agency, and I think Liv felt very guilty about this, and also for maybe like creating the whole mess in the first place with her spreading the information that Leah slept with the dad to everyone within the agency. As a result, it felt like during the second half of the show, Liv was trying to overcompensate to make sure that it won't look like she would betray Leah again. Like, she's trying to position herself within Leah's good books because she's afraid that Leah would think that she's trying to betray her. That's why I said I feel like Liv is definitely 21 and she definitely shows in the way that she acts. In terms of babysitting, she's fine, but I do think she is messy at times because she's young. However, the messiest person in the house next to Leah is Taylor. Oh my god, how do we even begin to talk about Taylor? Taylor doesn't have much experience babysitting for the 1%. She is just in the agency because her boyfriend of 5 to 6 years, Mitchell, was the person that Leah reached out to, but Mitchell asked Leah if Taylor could also come. Leah initially didn't want Taylor to come because she's afraid that them being a couple will conflict with work. With this, I actually agree with Leah because Taylor did create a lot of mess for the agency. Without Taylor, there would be no drama whatsoever within the agency. Then I don't know, should we even thank Taylor for creating most of the drama? No, we shouldn't be saying that. We should encourage her to get therapy because she really needs therapy. Taylor has a lot of trauma from her past and it really impacts her in the present. She was abandoned as a child, and as an adult, her boyfriends consistently cheated on her, which is awful, yes. But because of these past experiences, Taylor really clings on to people. But I feel like Taylor needs to go to therapy therapy and unpack her past, Taylor instead decides to become a nanny. And I don't think that's a good thing because I feel like she uses the occupation as a way to cope with what happened with her. She likes feeling needed. She likes being the person that the family rely on. She likes being part of a family, even if she is just a nanny. For those reasons, the line between professional relationships and personal relationships for Taylor is incredibly blurred. In this season, Taylor worked for an influencer and businesswoman named Nicola. Nicola was kind and welcoming, and Nicola's kids really loved Taylor, which led to Taylor being really attached to the family. She kept calling Nicola her mother and big sister figure that she never had in her life. Never mind the fact that by this stage, Taylor only met them for about 1 or 2 days, and her contract was about like a week worth. Pretty much all the nannies on the show recognizes that just because you bond with the family, there's still a distinction, right? They will never be family. There's a line. It's a professional relationship. You're not their friends. You can be amicable and friendly with the family, but you are just an employee. But Taylor doesn't seem to know much of the difference. She becomes incredibly attached to Nicola's family. Speaking of attachment, Taylor already has a tumultuous history of dating, so she's very vulnerable in her relationship with Mitchell, her boyfriend. Taylor really wants to get engaged, but Mitchell refuses to propose to her, and I think that made Taylor a little bit insecure in her relationship with Mitchell. At some point, Taylor was jealous when Mitchell was working with Liv as nannies for a family. To keep an eye on Mitchell, she arranged for a playdate between Nicola's daughters and the kids that Liv and Mitchell were babysitting. Mitchell and Liv and their kids were to meet Taylor at the resort that Nicola was staying at. Taylor and then Nicola's daughters and another nanny named Tamaya, who was there to help organize a party, were situated at the resort at the area where the chairs are. Anyway, they're just closer to the building of the resort, right? But Mitchell and Liv went to the beach because their kids said they wanted to go to the beach, and so Mitchell texted Taylor saying they are at the beach, but Taylor was upset that instead of saying hi to her first, Mitchell immediately went to the beach with the kids and with Olivia, and that Mitchell was shirtless. Like, I think it should be okay for Mitchell to be shirtless at the beach. Anyway, Taylor left Nicola's kids with Tamaya so she could confront Mitchell, and that's a big no-no because Tamaya is not the kid's nanny. Nicola hired Taylor, not Tamaya. Nicola returned from what she was doing, like she had to step out prior to this whole ordeal, and Nicola found out that Taylor left her daughters to talk to her boyfriend. And Nicola is this woman who is all about independence, like, I'm an independent single woman, I don't need any man, I can do it all. So how do you think it went down when Nicola confronted Taylor for leaving her kids to argue with her boyfriend? Well, Nicola fired Taylor, and that dredged up a lot of negative emotions within Taylor. She doesn't like disappointing people because she fears people would leave her because she disappointed them. She does not take the firing well. She gets incredibly upset because she's already incredibly attached to Nicola and her family. She cries a lot because the emotions were very overwhelming, but Tamaya tells Taylor, maybe there's a possibility that you can appeal to Nicola and Nicola might give back your job. So Taylor went to talk to Nicola. Meanwhile, Tamaya, Mitchell, and Liv returned to where the nannies were staying, and they told Leah all about what happened. Taylor appealed to Nicola, and Nicola rehired Taylor. When Taylor returned to where they were staying, they all had dinner, and Leah confronted Taylor about the firing. The confrontation got incredibly heated, and unnecessarily heated, to be quite honest. Some people even pointed that out, and one of those people was Liv. Liv tried comforting Taylor by saying something along the lines of, I don't know why Leah was so hard on you for getting fired when Leah herself did something worse, sleeping with a dad. And for some reason, Taylor went to Nicola and told Nicola about this completely unprompted. And Nicola knew a lot of 1% families in Ibiza, so word about Leah and this dad got around. This isn't the only time that Taylor did something like this. She has this habit of going to clients to get comfort or to vent, when I feel like the things she talks about should not be made privy to these clients. But I don't know, I think she finds them to be these like authority figures that she can trust. She shouldn't trust them, she's not their family. This is where I get a little bit parasocial and I'm psychoanalyzing this, right? I feel like Taylor puts these families on pedestals because of her own broken family. Because whenever I watch her interactions with the parents or with the children, it does feel like she yearns to be part of the family, when she shouldn't because these people are her employers. Her treatment of Mitchell should also not go unnoticed, because I feel like she's very hypercritical of Mitchell. She gets insanely jealous, she berates him often from what we are shown. I just feel like Taylor really needs to go to therapy because her behavior will inevitably lead to even more hurt. Being a babysitter is not the solution. It's not the coping mechanism that you should use to heal your trauma. She did say at the end of the season that she's going to therapy, and I am so glad for her. Like, she really, really needs it. Now let's talk about Mitchell, Taylor's boyfriend. They've been dating each other long term, about like 5 to 6 years, which is really, really long. And Taylor is really keen on getting engaged and getting married, but Mitchell seems to keep having excuses to not propose. He said he wants more financial stability. He wants to move out of his parents' house and get their own place before they get engaged. So for Mitchell, his intention of going on this trip is to save up and get a little bit more money. And I understand, because starting a family is not cheap and you need all these like safety nets, I guess. But I don't think Mitchell is as blameless as people on Reddit would say. I only say that because as it turns out, he doesn't want to propose because he fears getting hurt. And that's relatable, but I sort of wish that he would be more upfront about it with Taylor. Although I'm not sure how that conversation would go considering how Taylor is like. The thing is, Taylor is Mitchell's first relationship like ever. A lot of his firsts were with Taylor. It's really tricky because I feel like Taylor really needs someone who is patient but can also hold her accountable. And Mitchell is patient, but he doesn't have enough dating experience to know how to handle someone like Taylor. He doesn't know how to finesse that thin line of being empathetic, kind, and understanding, but also knowing how to draw boundaries and stand up for himself, and also trying to get Taylor to get the help that she needs. As a result, most of the time when Taylor and Mitchell were arguing, it felt like Mitchell just relented, where I feel like he could say his piece a little bit more. But I don't know, I also understand where he's coming from because maybe he doesn't feel like he has the space to do so considering how Taylor is like. I think it just comes down to both of them not being suited for each other. But my opinion doesn't matter because Mitchell ended up proposing to Taylor anyway. So yeah, I hope they're doing well. Tamaya is another nanny within the agency. I don't mind her. I think she's very professional and very serious about working. She's another nanny that I think is quite level-headed. She's very good where if a problem arises, she'll just nip it right in the bud. Like, she'll walk up to whoever is involved and then talk things out and clear things up as soon as possible before the situation has any opportunity to fester into something worse. For that reason, I don't have much to say because I feel like Tamaya doesn't get into as much drama. Even if she does get into drama, it quickly gets cleared up because Tamaya is the type of person who is mature enough to talk it out and have like really uncomfortable conversations. Tamaya can get a bit petty, I do have to say, but it's only with people who are incredibly frustrating like Leah. The only moment where I'm like, okay, that's probably not the right thing to say, is when Tamaya and Sydney were arguing. They both have different senses of humor, and Sydney made a joke about this baby doll that Tamaya sleeps with. As it turns out, the doll belonged to Tamaya's grandma who was in the hospice, and Sydney's reaction was to laugh. Maybe she was uncomfortable, so she doesn't really know what to do, and she just laughed. And Sydney went like, how was I supposed to know? That's probably not the greatest response, but the situation just kept escalating. Sydney tried apologizing, but Tamaya didn't find the apology sincere enough, and then the conversation got really heated. There was yelling. Sydney was already at a vulnerable position because prior to this conversation, she talked to her brother about her stepfather, so she might have felt a little bit tender because of that. But the situation really did escalate to the point that Sydney stormed off. Tamaya maybe thought that Sydney wasn't around to listen, so Tamaya talked about faith and how maybe if Sydney were to have stronger faith in God, Sydney would have peace and comfort throughout this ordeal. But the thing is, Sydney was just around the corner to listen to that. And yeah, like that's not really good, I would say. But thankfully, this confrontation got cleared up the following day because I think both Tamaya and Sydney were, despite the yelling that happened prior, I think they were mature enough to have the conversation and just to try and see each other's point of view. The final person to talk about is Hannah. Hannah is Jack's best friend, and there's nothing much to say about Hannah. I do have to say that she does remind me a little bit of a chihuahua for some reason. Maybe it's the energy. Hannah did get a little bit into an argument with Tamaya, mostly because Taylor twisted a bit of Tamaya's words about Hannah. I think Tamaya said something along the lines that Hannah can be a little bit rude, but then Taylor said that Tamaya called Hannah a when that didn't happen. But anyway, the situation got cleared up and it was just like another moment of like, Taylor, what are you doing? The biggest thing that Hannah struggled with the season is that it took a little bit of while for her to get a job, and that was difficult because she still had to keep paying rent in New York while she's in Ibiza. So as a result, she has to pay for 2 expensive accommodations. Because she really struggled to find work, she had to borrow money from her mom, and her mom was very reasonable, but it was also kind of like, I wouldn't say funny, because it was like when Hannah asked for the money, her mom was like, how much is it? And Hannah said, oh, $3,000. And her mom went, oh, okay, that's a lot of money. We'll see what we can do. But her mom was lovely. I wonder if they should have gotten like a cheaper accommodation, because the resort that they were in were really fancy, right? They had like ping pong tables, they had the space for like another gym and stuff like that. And I wonder, like, do we really need that? Yeah, that's a recap of $1 Million Nannies. I hope the video makes sense. I hope you guys enjoyed the video as well. Let me know what you guys think. Have you watched the show? Will you watch the show? Do you want to be $1 million nanny, or do you want to be $1 billion nanny? Aha!
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Talk to me in the comment section. If you like this video, please leave it a like, comment, and share the video as well. And also consider subscribing to the channel if you've made it this far for more commentaries, video essays, fun videos. I will be making those Outer Banks videos because I have a lot of like percolating thoughts about the show. Please look forward to them. And I'm also thinking about doing like a Tyra Banks adjacent video because Model Land has been trending. But the thing is, there's been a lot of recaps for Model Land, and I also don't think I have the time to read the book because it's so thick and I just don't want to read it. I know there's also a theme park for Model Land, but I don't know as much about it, and I also saw a lot of people already making videos about it. So I was thinking, Tyra Banks has an ice cream shop in Sydney, so I was like, should I make a video about that? Because I thought that was funny because there was a controversy about her calling the ice cream that she sells hot ice cream. But enough yapping from me. Thank you for watching this video, and thank you for making me part of your day. Have a good night, day, dusk, dawn, afternoon, evening, midnight, whatever time it is for you guys. And I hope to see you all in the next video, whatever that video may be. Bye!